My name is Larry Winters, 68 years old and the owner of Winters Construction. I built my fortune from nothing, brick by brick, just like my buildings. My children, Amanda and Daniel, were once my pride and joy. We were close, or so I thought. Last week, during my birthday dinner, my daughter slapped me across the face. My son actually clapped, and my daughter-in-law, Jessica, just sat there with that smirk, like I was already dead. None of them knew what I did when I got home that night. Let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button to find out how a $7 million decision changed everything 3 days later. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the son of a factory worker and a seamstress. We never had much, but my parents taught me the value of hard work and integrity. My father would come home with calloused hands and a tired smile, always telling me, "Larry, in this world, you get exactly what you earn." Those words became my life motto. I met Grace during my second year of community college. I was working 3 jobs to pay for my education, and she was waiting tables at a local diner. The first time I saw her, with her kind eyes and warm smile, I knew she was special. I asked her out 5 times before she said yes. "I wanted to make sure you were persistent enough," she later told me. We got married young, just 22 years old, with nothing but dreams and determination. The early years were tough. We lived in a tiny apartment with second-hand furniture and counted every penny. Grace never complained, not even when winter came and the heating barely worked. She would wrap us in blankets and say, "As long as we have each other, we have everything." Amanda came first, a beautiful baby girl with her mother's eyes and my stubborn chin. 2 years later, Daniel arrived, loud and demanding from the very start. Grace and I would look at them sleeping and marvel at the little family we had created. When Amanda was 7 and Daniel was 5, I took a risk that changed our lives. With a $10,000 loan from Grace's uncle and years of construction experience working for other people, I started Winters Construction. The timing wasn't ideal. Grace had just started teaching kindergarten, and money was always tight. Those first years in business tested everything about us. I worked 16-hour days, taking any job I could get. Residential driveways, small repair jobs, garden sheds, anything to keep the business afloat. Grace would help with the books after putting the kids to bed. Some months, we barely made payroll for the 2 men who worked for me. "This is going to work, Larry," Grace would tell me on the nights I came home too exhausted to eat. "I believe in you." And slowly, it did work. A small commercial job led to another, and our reputation for honest work and fair prices spread. By the time Amanda was 12, we had 20 employees and had moved into our first real house. It wasn't fancy, but it had a yard where the kids could play, and a kitchen where Grace loved to cook Sunday dinners. I made sure my children understood what it took to build something from nothing. During summer breaks, Amanda would come to the office, initially just to file papers or answer phones. But she showed a natural aptitude for the business, asking smart questions about contracts and profit margins. By 16, she could read a blueprint almost as well as I could. Daniel was different. He preferred spending to earning and viewed the business as an ATM rather than a legacy. While Amanda saved her allowance, Daniel was always asking for advances. "Dad, you have all this money now. Why do I need to save?" I tried to teach them both the same values my father taught me. "In this world, you get exactly what you earn," I would say. But I wondered if the lesson meant the same thing to children who never knew real hardship. When the children were in high school, Grace got sick. Cancer. The doctors gave her 6 months, but my Grace was a fighter. She stayed with us for almost 2 years. Those were dark days, balancing the growing business with hospital visits and trying to maintain some normalcy for our teenage children. The night before she died, Grace made me promise something. In the quiet hospital room, holding her thin hand, I leaned close to hear her whisper, "Keep them together, Larry. No matter what happens, keep our family together." I promised her I would. It became my mission after she was gone. Perhaps I tried too hard to fulfill that promise, making decisions I thought would bring us closer but ultimately drove us apart. After Grace passed, I threw myself into the business and being both parents to our children. Amanda was 18 and heading to college, Daniel 16, and increasingly rebellious. I tried my best, but I know I made mistakes. What father doesn't? The business continued to grow. What started with driveways and garden sheds became shopping malls and office buildings. Winters Construction developed a reputation for quality and reliability across 3 states. I was proud of what I had built, but mostly I was proud because I thought someday it would provide for my children and their children. A legacy that started with my calloused hands would continue long after I was gone. I never remarried. There were a few women over the years, but no one compared to Grace. Besides, between the business and my children, there wasn't much time for dating. Amanda and Daniel became my whole world. Perhaps that was another mistake. As they grew into adults, I looked forward to the day we would all work together, building something even greater than what I had started. I should have remembered my father's words more carefully. In this world, you get exactly what you earn. And sometimes, what you get is a hard lesson about trust and family. Amanda thrived in college, graduating with honors with a business degree. She had her mother's intelligence and my determination, a combination that made her formidable. I was so proud watching her walk across that stage at graduation, knowing Grace would have been beaming. "I want to work for the company, Dad," she told me after the ceremony. "I want to learn everything from you." Nothing could have made me happier. We started her in project management, where she could learn the practical side of the business. Amanda was a natural leader, earning the respect of crews much older than her through her knowledge and work ethic. Daniel took a different path. He started college at an expensive private university but dropped out after 3 semesters. "It's not for me, Dad," he explained, as if that justified the $60,000 in tuition I had already paid. "Besides, you did fine without a degree." What Daniel failed to understand was that I had worked through blood, sweat, and tears for everything I had. Nothing was handed to me, but I was softer on him than I should have been. When he asked for money to start various ventures, I provided it. When those ventures inevitably failed due to his lack of follow-through, I bailed him out. Grace had always been the disciplinarian with Daniel. Without her, I struggled to say no. Amanda married Thomas first, a contractor who worked with one of our suppliers. Thomas was practical and hard-working, reminding me a bit of myself at that age. They bought a modest starter home and lived within their means, even though Amanda's position at the company could have afforded them much more. "We want to earn our way up, Dad," Amanda explained, when I offered to help with a down payment on a bigger house. I respected that decision and was pleased to see my values reflected in her choices. 2 years later, Daniel married Jessica. She came from money, old money as she liked to remind us. At their wedding, which cost more than my first house, Jessica's parents looked at our family with barely concealed disdain. Jessica had similar expectations for her lifestyle with Daniel, expectations that his salary as a consultant to my company could not possibly fulfill. The first time I visited their new house, a sprawling 5-bedroom in an exclusive neighborhood, I knew they were living beyond their means. "How can you afford this place?" I asked Daniel privately. "We have investments, Dad," he said vaguely. "Plus, your wedding gift was generous." The wedding gift had been identical for both children, $100,000. Enough for a solid down payment on a reasonable home, not enough for this showcase. But I kept my concerns to myself, not wanting to create tension. Another mistake. Jessica never tried to hide her disdain for me or what she considered my unsophisticated ways. When I brought store-bought wine to their housewarming, she smiled thinly and set it aside. "We usually drink French vintages, but this is quaint." I tried to include Daniel more in the business, hoping it might give him purpose and responsibility. But he showed little interest in learning the details, preferring to take long lunches with clients and leave early. Meanwhile, Amanda was working 60-hour weeks and showing real leadership potential. "She should run the company someday," Thomas told me once when we were sharing a beer after work. "She has the vision and the drive." I agreed. But I also wanted to find a place for Daniel. Family businesses succeed when the family sticks together. I remembered my promise to Grace. The first major argument about money happened at Christmas, 5 years after Grace died. We were at my house, the same one where Amanda and Daniel had grown up. Jessica spent the first hour commenting on how everything needed updating and how she could recommend an excellent interior designer. When I handed out the Christmas bonus checks, identical amounts to both Amanda and Daniel, Amanda frowned. "Dad, I've been managing the West Side project alone for months. Daniel hasn't even been to the site." "We're family," I said firmly. "We share equally." Daniel smirked at his sister. "See? Dad gets it." That night, I overheard Amanda and Thomas talking in the kitchen. "It's not fair," Amanda was saying. "I work twice as hard." "Your dad just wants to keep the family together," Thomas replied. "He promised your mom." "Well, it's creating a monster in Daniel, and Jessica is just making it worse." Looking back, that was when things began to change. Amanda started spending more time with Jessica, going to lunches and spa days. I was happy at first, thinking the women were bonding. I didn't realize Jessica was poisoning my daughter's mind against me. Slowly, Amanda became more critical of my business decisions. "Dad, your methods are outdated. We need to expand more aggressively." Daniel, too, became more vocal about how I was holding the company back. It was always vague criticisms, never specific suggestions for improvement. "The old man doesn't understand modern business," I once overheard him tell Jessica when they thought I was out of earshot. "But don't worry, we won't have to put up with it much longer." I didn't understand what was happening to my once close family. Was it normal for children to grow so distant, so critical? Had I failed them somehow? Or was there something else going on? At company Christmas parties, I would watch Amanda and Daniel whispering in corners, conversation stopping when I approached. Jessica would be nearby, that same smirk on her face that I would come to know all too well. "They're just planning your retirement surprise," Thomas told me when I mentioned my concerns. But there was worry in his eyes that made me think he knew more than he was saying. The distance between us grew wider. Sunday family dinners became less frequent. Amanda was too busy with work. Daniel and Jessica had prior commitments with her family. The chair where Grace once sat remained empty, and increasingly, other chairs joined it. I told myself it was normal. Children growing up and building their own lives. But in my heart, I knew something was wrong. The family I had promised Grace I would keep together was fracturing before my eyes, and I didn't know how to stop it. The first sign of real trouble came when I noticed discrepancies in the company financials. Small at first, easily dismissed as accounting errors. A project that went $10,000 over budget with no clear explanation. A supplier being paid twice for the same order. Client invoices delayed by weeks. I brought my concerns to Amanda, who had taken over much of the financial oversight. "Dad, you don't need to micromanage everything," she said dismissively. "These are normal fluctuations in a company our size. Besides, shouldn't you be thinking about slowing down? You work too hard for a man your age." A man my age. The word stung. I was 67, not 97. Yes, my hair was gray and my knees protested more than they used to, but my mind was sharp. I built this company from nothing. I knew when numbers didn't add up. The next incident happened at a family dinner, one of the few we still managed to have. Daniel and Jessica arrived late, as usual. Jessica was wearing a new diamond bracelet that caught the light as she gestured dramatically through stories about her country club friends. "Sorry we're late," Daniel said, not sounding sorry at all. "We were looking at boats, thinking of getting a 30-footer for the lake house." "Lake house?" I asked, confused. "What lake house?" Daniel and Jessica exchanged glances. "Oh, we're closing next month," Jessica said breezily. "Just a little weekend place, nothing extravagant." Nothing extravagant. Yet Daniel's salary couldn't possibly cover a boat and a lake house. I made a mental note to look into his company expenses more carefully. Later that evening, I overheard Daniel and Jessica in the hallway near the bathrooms. "How much longer do we have to wait?" Jessica was asking. "Amanda says we need to be patient," Daniel replied. "She has a plan for Dad's retirement, just a few more months." "I'm tired of waiting. Your father is sitting on a gold mine and doesn't even know it." I stepped back around the corner, heart pounding. My own children were plotting my retirement, without discussing it with me? The next day at the office, Amanda suggested I step back from daily operations to enjoy life more. "The company runs smoothly now, Dad. You deserve a break. Thomas and I can handle the day-to-day, and Daniel can manage client relations." "I'm not ready to retire," I told her firmly. "No one said retire," she said quickly. "Just delegate more." That same week, Thomas tried to talk to me privately. He had been working on a major renovation project and wanted to show me something about the contracts. But before he could get into details, Amanda interrupted us. "Dad, we need you for a meeting with the Henderson client." Thomas gave me a look I couldn't quite interpret. "We'll talk later," he said. But later never came. Amanda kept me busy with meetings that could have been handled without me, while taking over ones that I normally would have led. It was subtle, but I was slowly being pushed out of decision-making in my own company. My suspicions grew when I found documents on Amanda's desk about forcing a buyout of a family business. They weren't about our company specifically, but the highlighted sections about leverage and pressure tactics made my blood run cold. Daniel's sudden request for a loan of $300,000 for a business opportunity added to my unease. "It's a sure thing, Dad," he insisted. "Triple return within a year." "I'd like to see a business plan," I said reasonably. "Don't you trust me?" he asked, looking offended. "After everything you've done for Amanda, you can't help me out?" The implication that I favored Amanda had become Daniel's constant refrain, though I had always been scrupulously fair in financial matters. Perhaps too fair, given their unequal contributions to the business. Jessica's comments during a dinner at their extravagant house further fueled my concerns. "Your home is so quaint, Larry," she said, sipping an expensive wine that Daniel couldn't afford. "Have you thought about selling? At your age, maintenance must be such a burden." "I'm quite capable of maintaining my home," I replied. "And it has sentimental value. Grace and I raised our family there." "Sentimentality doesn't appreciate in value," Jessica remarked with that smirk I was growing to hate. The final confirmation of my worst fears came when I learned that Amanda had been meeting with Saxon Development, our biggest competitor. A loyal employee saw her entering their offices and reported it to me privately. "I didn't know who else to tell, Mr. Winters," he said nervously. "But it didn't seem right. It wasn't right. None of it was right. My own daughter, secretly meeting with competitors while pushing me to step back from my company. My son, living beyond his means and constantly asking for more. The small financial discrepancies that were adding up to significant amounts. I reached out to my old friend Frank, who had sold his plumbing business to his children years ago. We met for coffee at a diner far from my office, where no one would recognize us. "They're trying to push me out, Frank," I admitted after explaining the situation. "My own children." Frank sighed heavily. "I hate to say it, Larry, but I've seen this before. When money and business mix with family, people change. My advice? Protect yourself. Now. Before it's too late." "But they're my children," I protested. "Grace made me promise to keep the family together." "Keeping a family together doesn't mean letting them rob you blind," Frank said bluntly. "Grace wouldn't have wanted that either." I left that meeting shaken, but still unable to fully believe my children would betray me. There had to be an explanation. Perhaps I was misreading the situation. Perhaps Amanda had a legitimate reason for meeting with Saxon Development. But as I drove home, past the buildings I had helped create over a lifetime of hard work, a cold certainty settled in my gut. The children I had sacrificed everything for were plotting against me. The empire I had built for them had become more valuable to them than my presence in their lives. That night, I sat alone in my quaint house, looking at old family photos, Amanda and Daniel as children, laughing on the beach during a rare vacation, Grace holding them on her lap, her smile radiant. Where had it all gone wrong? Had I indulged them too much? Not enough? Had I failed to teach them the values that mattered? Whatever mistakes I had made as a father, I couldn't let them destroy what I had built or each other in the process. I needed to understand exactly what was happening before my birthday dinner the following week. I needed the truth, however painful it might be. My 68th birthday arrived on a Tuesday in October. Despite the growing tension in the family, I still hoped the celebration might bring us together again. Perhaps away from the office and Jessica's influence, we could find our way back to being a family. I made reservations at Porter's Steakhouse, an upscale restaurant downtown that had been a special occasion spot for our family for years. Grace and I had celebrated our 25th anniversary there, just months before her diagnosis. The familiar setting might remind my children of happier times, I thought. I arrived early, nervous but hopeful. The hostess led me to a private dining room I had requested, where a round table was set for 5. A bottle of champagne chilled in an ice bucket. A small extravagance to mark the occasion. Amanda and Thomas arrived first. Amanda was wearing a sleek black dress that reminded me of her mother, but her expression lacked Grace's warmth. Thomas squeezed my shoulder as we shook hands, a gesture that seemed almost apologetic. "Happy birthday, Dad," Amanda said, handing me a small wrapped package. Her tone was formal, as if addressing a business associate rather than her father. "Thanks for coming," I replied, trying to keep things light. "I've missed our family dinners." Amanda checked her watch. "Daniel and Jessica are late, as usual." We sat in awkward silence for several minutes, Thomas attempting small talk about a baseball game while Amanda typed on her phone. The distance between us felt greater than ever. When Daniel and Jessica finally arrived, 20 minutes late, Jessica immediately complained about the parking. "This place is so outdated," she said loudly. "I told Daniel we should have suggested La Maison instead. They have valet service." Daniel barely looked at me as he mumbled, "Happy birthday, Dad," and slid a gift card across the table. "Thank you for coming," I said sincerely. "It means a lot to have you all here." Jessica sipped the champagne and made a face. "Is this domestic?" The waiter arrived to take our orders, providing a brief reprieve from the tension. I ordered my usual steak, medium rare, remembering how Grace would always steal a bite from my plate, claiming it tasted better than hers. As we waited for our meals, I tried to engage everyone in casual conversation. "How are things at the Henderson project, Thomas?" Before Thomas could answer, Amanda interrupted. "Actually, Dad, there's something we wanted to discuss with you tonight." The serious tone in her voice confirmed my fears. This wasn't just a birthday dinner. They had an agenda. "I'm listening," I said, keeping my expression neutral. "It's about the future," Amanda continued, straightening the silverware in front of her. "The company's future, specifically. And yours," Daniel added, exchanging a look with Jessica. "My future?" I asked, though I already knew where this was headed. Amanda leaned forward. "Dad, Winters Construction has growth potential that we're not capitalizing on. Saxon Development has expressed interest in a partnership that could double our market share." "Saxon Development? Our biggest competitor?" I kept my voice even, though my heart was racing. "And when were you planning to tell me about these discussions?" "That's what we're doing now," Amanda said smoothly. "We wanted to have all the details ready before bringing it to you." "I see." I took a sip of water. "And what role do you see for me in this partnership?" Daniel jumped in. "That's the thing, Dad. For this to work, they want new leadership, younger leadership. They want you to step down," Jessica said bluntly. "Retire. Enjoy your life." The food arrived, but no one touched it. The celebratory atmosphere had completely evaporated, replaced by a business negotiation I hadn't agreed to participate in. "I built this company from nothing," I said quietly. "I'm not ready to retire." "Dad, be reasonable," Amanda said, her voice taking on the patronizing tone she'd been using more frequently. "You're 68. Most people your age are playing golf and visiting grandchildren. The company needs fresh ideas," Daniel added. "You're holding it back." "Holding it back?" I repeated, my temper rising. "Winters Construction has shown steady growth for 20 years under my leadership." "Steady isn't enough anymore," Amanda countered. "We could be expanding much faster. By partnering with our biggest competitor, the same people who tried to undercut us on the Riverview project last year, who have a reputation for hostile takeovers?" "Business is business, Dad," Daniel said dismissively. "Saxon has resources we need." I looked at each of them in turn, these children I had raised, now strangers across the table. "And if I refuse this partnership?" Amanda reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. "We were hoping you would be reasonable, but if not, we have other options." She slid the folder toward me. Inside were legal documents, including a competency evaluation request. "What is this?" I asked, though I already knew. "Just a precaution," Amanda said. "We can claim that age-related cognitive decline is affecting your business judgment. You want to declare me incompetent? Your own father?" The betrayal was so complete, so cold-blooded that I almost couldn't process it. "Only if necessary," Daniel said. "Personally, I think we should buy you out. Generous terms, of course." "Of course," I repeated numbly. Jessica leaned forward. "Larry, be sensible. Take the money and enjoy your remaining years. Travel, date. Do whatever old people do." I looked at Thomas, who had remained silent throughout the exchange. His face was troubled, his eyes apologetic. At least someone at the table seemed to have a conscience. "And what do you think about all this, Thomas?" I asked him directly. Before he could answer, Amanda cut him off. "Thomas agrees that this is the best path forward for everyone." Thomas opened his mouth, then closed it again, looking down at his untouched food. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions raging inside me. "I need time to think about this." "There isn't much time," Amanda pressed. "Saxon wants an answer by Friday." "Friday? You give me 3 days to decide whether to hand over a company I spent 40 years building?" "Dad, you're being dramatic," Daniel sighed. "It's just business." "Just business," I repeated. "Is that what family means to you now? Just business?" "Sign the retirement papers tonight, and we'll handle everything else," Amanda said, pushing another document toward me. Clean transition. No mess. I looked at the paper, then back at my daughter's face. This woman, who had once sat on my shoulders, who I had taught to ride a bike, who had cried in my arms when her mother died, was now coolly pushing me out of my own life's work. No, I said firmly, pushing the papers back. I will not sign anything tonight. I need time to review everything with my own lawyer. Dad, don't be difficult, Amanda snapped, her composure cracking. You always do this, always have to control everything. Can't you see we're trying to help you? Help me? By going behind my back to our competitors? By threatening to declare me incompetent? My voice was rising now, drawing glances from nearby tables. Lower your voice, Jessica hissed. People are staring. Let them stare, I replied. Let them see what kind of children betray their father on his birthday. You're impossible, Amanda said through gritted teeth. This is why we had to do things this way. You never listen. I built that company for you, I said, my voice breaking slightly. For both of you. So you would always be secure. So your mother's memory would live on through our family's work. Mom has been gone for 15 years, Dad, Daniel said impatiently. You need to move on. The company isn't a shrine to her. That was when something snapped inside me. Don't you dare use your mother to justify this. This coup. Grace taught you better than this. She believed in family loyalty, in earning what you have. Oh, please, enough with the lectures about hard work, Amanda said, rolling her eyes. Times have changed. This is about smart business, not sentimentality. Smart business? Is that what you call secretly meeting with our competitors? Plotting against your own father? I pushed back my chair slightly. Your mother would be ashamed of what you've become. The words hung in the air for a moment before Amanda's hand shot across the table, slapping me hard across the face. The crack echoed in the suddenly silent room. I sat there, stunned, my cheek burning from the impact. In 68 years, no one had ever struck me. Certainly not my own child. Don't you dare tell me what Mom would think, Amanda said, her voice shaking with rage. She would understand that sometimes tough decisions are necessary. What happened next was even more stunning. Daniel slowly began to clap. Finally, he said with a smirk matching his wife's. Someone said it. You can't use Mom against us anymore, Dad. That guilt trip is getting old, just like you. Jessica didn't clap, but the smirk on her face spoke volumes. She leaned over to whisper something to Daniel, her eyes never leaving my face, as if I were some pathetic specimen to be studied. Thomas looked horrified. Amanda, that's enough, he said, reaching for his wife's arm. This isn't right. Stay out of this, she snapped at him. Family business. I touched my cheek gently, feeling the heat where her hand had connected. In that moment, something died inside me. The last hope that this was all a misunderstanding, that my children still loved me beneath their ambition. The last promise I was desperately trying to keep to Grace. Without a word, I stood up, placed my napkin on the table, and walked out. No one called after me. No one followed. As I passed the main dining room, I felt the stares of strangers who had witnessed my humiliation but could never understand the depth of the betrayal. In the parking lot, I sat in my car for several minutes, unable to drive, unable to process what had just happened. My daughter had slapped me, my son had applauded. And for what? Money. Control. Things I would have given them freely if they had only asked with love instead of demanded with cruelty. The drive home was a blur. Streetlights smeared through tears I refused to acknowledge. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the shock had given way to a hollowness I hadn't felt since Grace died. But this was different. Grace had been taken by disease, something beyond anyone's control. My children had chosen to break my heart. As I unlocked my front door and stepped into the dark, silent house, I realized with painful clarity that I was truly alone now. The family I had promised Grace I would keep together no longer existed, and I had decisions to make. I didn't turn on the lights when I entered the house. The darkness suited my mood as I sank into my recliner, the same chair where I had rocked both Amanda and Daniel as babies when they were colicky or sick. The house that Jessica had dismissed as quaint held the physical memory of a lifetime. Every scuff on the hardwood, every slightly crooked picture frame told the story of our family. In the stillness, memories surfaced like photographs. Amanda at 7, proudly showing me a birdhouse she had built with scrap wood from a job site. Daniel at 10, falling asleep against my shoulder during a thunderstorm that had frightened him. Grace in our kitchen, flour on her cheek as she taught the children to make her mother's cookie recipe. Where had those children gone? How had they transformed into the cold strangers at that restaurant table? My cheek still stung from Amanda's slap, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the ache in my heart. I had given them everything, sacrificed my own comfort and dreams to build something lasting for them, and they had reduced it all to a business transaction. I tried, Grace, I whispered to the empty room. God knows I tried to keep them together, to keep your memory alive through them. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked steadily, marking time as I sat motionless. 1 hour passed, then another. The initial shock gradually gave way to clarity, the emotional fog lifting to reveal hard truths I could no longer deny. My children saw me as an obstacle, not a father. They valued what I had built more than the man who built it. The promise I had made to Grace had become a chain around my neck, binding me to people who no longer deserved my loyalty or love. At some point during that long night, sadness transformed into resolve. I had spent decades teaching my children about consequences in small ways, lessons they had clearly forgotten. Perhaps it was time for one final, unforgettable lesson. Around 3 a.m, I finally stirred from my chair and walked to my home office. The room was exactly as I had left it that morning, neat and organized, with family photos lining the bookshelves. Photos that now seemed to mock me with their frozen smiles and false promises. Behind my desk hung a landscape painting Grace had loved, a peaceful scene of mountains at sunset. I carefully lifted it from the wall, revealing a small safe embedded in the plaster. The combination came easily to my fingers. 35 years of marriage, the day we said I do. Inside the safe were the documents that defined my life's work and legacy. My will, leaving everything equally to Amanda and Daniel. The trust documents for the business succession plan, ensuring a smooth transition when I eventually retired. The deed to the house. And at the back, nearly forgotten, a $7 million life insurance policy I had taken out after Grace died. I had purchased it during the darkest days of grief, when I couldn't bear the thought of leaving my children without protection if something happened to me too. $7 million, enough to secure their futures no matter what. The policy was paid up, its benefits waiting to be distributed according to my wishes. I spread the documents across my desk, the lamplight casting long shadows across pages that suddenly seemed like weapons rather than protections. These papers represented power, the power to reward or punish, to give or withhold. Power I had never wanted to wield against my own children, but now seemed the only language they would understand. The life insurance policy drew my attention repeatedly. $7 million that my children clearly didn't need, given their eagerness to take the company worth 5 times that amount. $7 million that could do actual good in the world instead of funding lake houses and diamond bracelets. I reached for the phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. It rang 4 times before a groggy voice answered. "Jacob, it's Larry Winters. I apologize for the hour, but this is urgent." Jacob Cohen had been my attorney for 30 years, a friend as much as a legal advisor. He had helped me build the company's legal framework and knew every aspect of my business and personal affairs. "Larry, it's 3:30 in the morning. Is everything okay?" "No," I answered honestly. "Nothing is okay. But I need your help first thing tomorrow. Can you clear your morning calendar?" To his credit, Jacob didn't ask for details. "Of course. Be at my office at 8. I'll have coffee waiting." "Thank you. And Jacob, bring the documents for establishing a charitable foundation." After hanging up, I took a legal pad from my desk drawer and began to write. The words came slowly at first, painfully, but gradually flowed more easily as the night progressed. A letter explaining my decisions, a record of the betrayal, and finally, instructions for what would come next. As I wrote, I felt a strange lightening of my spirit. Each word on the page was a step away from the crushing weight of broken promises and toward something new. Something that honored Grace's memory without chaining me to children who had become strangers. The eastern sky was beginning to lighten when I finally set down my pen. I had not slept, yet I felt more awake than I had in years. The numbness of shock had given way to a cold, clear purpose. I carefully returned the documents to the safe, except for my will and the insurance policy. Those I placed in my briefcase along with the letter I had written. Then I showered and dressed in my best suit, the one I wore to important business meetings. because today would be the most important business of my life. As I knotted my tie, I caught my reflection in the mirror. There was a faint red mark on my cheek, where Amanda's hand had struck, but my eyes were clear and determined. I was still Larry Winters, the man who had built something from nothing through hard work and integrity. That man would not be discarded like yesterday's newspaper. I ate a simple breakfast, made a few more phone calls, and left the house exactly at 7:30. The morning was crisp and clear, the kind of autumn day Grace had loved. As I backed out of the driveway, I glanced at the house one last time. Whatever happened in the coming days, I knew things would never be the same. The home that had witnessed our family's greatest joys and deepest sorrows might soon belong to someone else. The thought brought a pang of sadness, but no longer the paralyzing grief of the night before. Grace had not loved the house, she had loved the people in it. And the people I had promised to keep together no longer existed. "I'm sorry, Grace," I whispered as I drove away. "I couldn't keep them together. But I can still honor what you really wanted. I can still make this right." By the time I reached Jacob's office, the sun had fully risen, casting long shadows across the city. A new day. And for me, the beginning of a new chapter I had never anticipated writing. 3 days. That's all Amanda had given me to decide my future. 3 days would be enough to change everything. Jacob was waiting for me with coffee and concern written across his face. In 30 years of friendship, he had never seen me arrive in such a state, sleepless and grim with determination. "Larry, what happened?" he asked, closing his office door for privacy. I told him everything. The financial discrepancies, the secret meetings with Saxon Development, the birthday dinner ambush, the slap. By the time I finished, his expression had changed from concern to outrage. "They can't do this," he said, shaking his head. "Legally, they have no standing to force you out without a majority shareholder vote, which you control. This isn't about legality, Jacob. It's about trust, family. They're prepared to claim I'm incompetent if I don't cooperate." Jacob leaned back in his chair, processing. "Such claims would be difficult to prove, you're sharp as ever. But the damage would be done. To the company's reputation, to client confidence." I placed my briefcase on his desk and removed the documents I had brought. "I'm not here to fight them. I'm here to change the game." For the next 2 hours, Jacob and I worked methodically through my new plan. We revised my will, removing Amanda and Daniel as primary beneficiaries. We created a management trust for Winters Construction with an independent board, ensuring the company would continue operating regardless of who owned it. And finally, we drafted paperwork for the Larry and Grace Winters Foundation, funded initially by my $7 million life insurance policy. "Are you sure about this?" Jacob asked as I signed the last document. "It's a dramatic step." "I've never been more certain," I replied. "They want my money, not my love. So be it." Jacob promised to expedite everything, having the necessary paperwork ready within 48 hours. As I left his office, he squeezed my shoulder the way Grace used to when I faced a difficult decision. "Larry, for what it's worth, I think Grace would understand. Keeping a family together means nothing if there's no love in it." My next stop was Thomas's job site. I needed allies, and my son-in-law had shown signs of discomfort with my children's plan. I found him inspecting foundation work on our newest project. "Thomas," I called. "Got a minute?" His face registered surprise, then guilt. "Mr. Winters, about last night." "Let's talk privately," I suggested, nodding toward my truck. Once inside, Thomas spoke first. "I want you to know I had no part in planning that ambush. I didn't even know about it until we were driving to the restaurant." "I believe you. But I need to know what else is happening that I don't know about." Thomas hesitated, loyalty to his wife warring with his sense of right and wrong. "Thomas, this isn't just about me. If Amanda and Daniel succeed in selling to Saxon, what happens to our employees, our clients? I built this company on relationships and trust." That seemed to decide him. "Amanda's been meeting with Saxon for months. They're offering her the CEO position in the merged company. Daniel gets a vice presidency and a huge payout. And you?" Thomas looked away. "A division manager role. Better than nothing. And the competency claim? Was that their idea or Saxon's?" "Saxon's," Thomas admitted. "Their attorney suggested it as leverage if you wouldn't cooperate. Amanda didn't like the idea, but Daniel pushed for it." I nodded, absorbing this final betrayal. "One more question. Has Amanda been diverting company clients to set up for the merger? Thomas's silence was answer enough. I thanked him for his honesty and asked one final favor. Don't tell them we spoke. Let them think their plan is proceeding. After leaving Thomas, I drove to my bank, where I had been a customer for decades. The bank manager welcomed me personally into his office, and I spent an hour reviewing all accounts connected to Winters Construction and my personal finances. What I discovered confirmed my suspicions. Daniel had been writing company checks to vendors that didn't exist, funneling money into personal accounts to support his lavish lifestyle. I'd like to change the signature requirements on all company accounts, I told the manager. Effective immediately, 2 signatures will be required for any transaction over $1,000. Next was a meeting with Stephen Maxwell, my most trusted project manager who had been with the company for 25 years. If anyone could help me understand the full extent of what was happening, it was Steve. I've been wanting to talk to you for months, Steve admitted, when I asked him directly about Amanda's activities. She's been systematically moving our best clients to a separate project list, ones she personally manages, and there have been meetings with Saxon people at project sites when you weren't around. Why didn't you come to me sooner? Steve looked uncomfortable. She's your daughter, and the presumed heir to the company. I didn't want to cause family problems. Plus, she implied that you knew about the Saxon discussions. I spent the rest of that first day gathering information, building a complete picture of my children's betrayal. By evening, I had a detailed file documenting financial irregularities, client diversions, and the secret negotiations with Saxon Development. The second day began with another meeting with Jacob, who had worked through the night to prepare the legal documents. We filed everything immediately, making my new arrangements official before Amanda or Daniel could catch wind of what I was doing. The foundation paperwork will take another day, Jacob informed me, but your will and the management trust are now legally binding. With those crucial pieces in place, I turned my attention to Daniel's financial situation. A discreet inquiry, through contacts at his bank, confirmed what I had suspected. Despite the money I had given him over the years and his substantial salary, Daniel was deeply in debt. Credit cards maxed out, multiple loans in default, and most shocking, a gambling problem that had resulted in IOUs to people no one should owe money to. Jessica had to know about this, which explained her desperate push for my retirement and the company's sale. They needed a massive cash influx to avoid financial ruin. That afternoon, I visited my insurance agent to confirm the $7 million policy was fully transferable to the foundation. Then, I spoke with my accountant about the tax implications of my decisions. By the end of the day, every aspect of my new plan was legally secured. The third day, the deadline Amanda had given me for my decision, I spent preparing for the confrontation to come. I arranged for a family meeting at my home that evening, telling Amanda it was to discuss the Saxon offer. "I'm glad you're being reasonable, Dad," she said, sounding relieved. "This really is the best solution for everyone." "I've had time to think it over," I replied neutrally. 7 o'clock my house, bring the Saxon paperwork. Before they arrived, I carefully arranged the living room, placing documents in strategic locations where they would be visible but not immediately obvious. I prepared coffee and Grace's favorite pound cake, a small nod to her memory on this pivotal night. At exactly 7, the doorbell rang. Amanda arrived first, professional in a business suit, a folder of documents tucked under her arm. Thomas followed, unable to meet my eyes. Daniel and Jessica arrived 10 minutes late, as usual. Jessica immediately complaining about the neighborhood's lack of street lighting. "Let's get started," Amanda said, all business as she sat down and opened her folder. "I have the retirement agreement here, along with the initial paperwork for the Saxon merger." I remained standing, looking at these people who were my family in name only now. My daughter, once so much like her mother, now hard-eyed and calculating. My son, weak and entitled, a shadow of the man I had hoped he would become. Jessica, whose contempt for me had never been hidden. And Thomas, uncomfortable and conflicted. "Before we begin," I said calmly, "I want to thank you all for coming. What I have to say tonight will change our family forever, so I ask that you listen completely before responding." Amanda frowned slightly. "Dad, we have a lot of paperwork to get through." "This won't take long," I assured her. 3 days ago, at my birthday dinner, you gave me an ultimatum. Step down from my company or be declared incompetent. You demanded an answer within 3 days. Well, today is the third day, and I have my answer. I picked up a remote control and turned on a digital recorder that had been sitting unobtrusively on the bookshelf. First, let me confirm what I understand. Amanda, you have been secretly negotiating with Saxon Development to sell Winters Construction without my knowledge. In exchange, you would become CEO of the merged company, and Daniel would receive a vice presidency he hasn't earned. Amanda's confident expression faltered. That's not exactly. Additionally, I continued, you have been diverting company clients to a separate project list in preparation for this merger. And Daniel has been embezzling company funds through fake vendor accounts to support a lifestyle far beyond his means and to cover substantial gambling debts. Daniel's face drained of color. What are you talking about? I placed a folder on the coffee table. Bank statements, transaction records, client communications. 3 days is plenty of time to uncover the truth when you know where to look. Jessica shifted uncomfortably on the sofa. This is ridiculous. We came here to help you transition into retirement with dignity. No, I corrected her. You came here expecting me to surrender everything I've built to save Daniel from his debts and to fulfill Amanda's ambition. You expected me to walk away with a pat on the head and a modest payout while you divided the spoils. I walked to my desk and returned with another set of documents. As of yesterday, ownership of Winters Construction has been transferred to a management trust with an independent board. I will remain CEO until I choose to retire, at which point the board will select my successor based on merit, not bloodlines. Amanda stood up, her face flushed with anger. You can't do that. The company is our inheritance. Inheritance, I repeated slowly. An interesting choice of words for something you tried to take by force rather than receive as a gift. I handed each of them copies of my revised will. You might want to read this as well. As you'll see, I've made some changes regarding my personal assets too. Daniel scanned the document, his expression changing from confusion to shock to panic. This can't be legal. He's cut us out completely. Not completely, I corrected him. You each receive $1 and the valuable lesson that actions have consequences. $1? Jessica nearly screamed. After everything we've done for you? I couldn't help but laugh at that. What exactly have you done for me, Jessica, besides criticize my home, mock my values, and encourage my son's worst impulses? Amanda was reading more carefully, her legal mind already searching for weaknesses. The Winters Foundation? What is this? My new legacy, I explained. A foundation to support young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds, people who want to earn their success rather than steal it. It will be funded initially with $7 million from my life insurance policy, which I've transferred to the foundation effective immediately. $7 million? Daniel gasped. You had that kind of money just sitting there while I've been struggling? Struggling to maintain a lifestyle you hadn't earned, I corrected him. Yes, I had it sitting there, originally intended to secure your futures if anything happened to me. But you made it clear my money matters more to you than my love, so now it will go to people who will use it as Grace would have wanted. Jessica turned on Daniel. You said your father would take care of our debts. You promised the merger would solve everything. I told you what you wanted to hear, Daniel said defensively. How was I supposed to know he'd investigate everything in 3 days? Because he's your father, Thomas spoke up suddenly. And if you knew him at all, you'd know he values truth and hard work above everything. Amanda rounded on her husband. You knew about this, didn't you? You warned him. Thomas stood his ground. No, I didn't warn him, but I'm not surprised he figured it out. You underestimated him, just like you underestimated me. What's that supposed to mean? Amanda demanded. It means I'm standing with your father, Thomas said firmly. What you and Daniel planned was wrong. I tried to tell you that, but you wouldn't listen. The room erupted into chaos. Amanda and Daniel shouting accusations at each other and me, Jessica alternating between tears and threats about lawyers. Through it all, I remained calm, watching the final destruction of what had once been a family, feeling sadness but also a strange sense of peace. When the noise finally subsided, I spoke again. The decisions I've made are final and legally binding. The company will continue under my leadership until I choose to step down. My personal assets will eventually fund the foundation, apart from this house, which I'm leaving to Thomas in recognition of his integrity. Thomas? Amanda whispered, betrayal in her voice. You're leaving the house to Thomas? Yes, I confirmed. Because unlike my own children, he remembered the values that matter: honesty, loyalty, respect. Daniel stood up, pulling Jessica with him. "This is insane." "Come on, Jess. We don't need to listen to this. My lawyer will be contacting you, Dad. He's welcome to call Jacob, who has documented every financial irregularity you've committed. Embezzlement carries a prison sentence, Daniel. Remember that before you start legal proceedings." Daniel froze, then stormed out without another word, Jessica trailing behind him. Amanda remained, staring at me with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You would really do this? Throw away our family over business?" The irony of her question was breathtaking. "I'm not the one who threw away our family, Amanda. You did that when you decided your ambition was more important than your integrity. When you slapped your father for reminding you of your mother's values." She flinched at the memory. "That was a mistake. I was angry." "Yes, you were. Angry that I wouldn't give you what you wanted. Angry that I expected you to earn it instead." I softened my tone slightly. "I loved you and Daniel more than anything in this world. I would have given you everything I had if you had only asked with love instead of demanded with cruelty." Amanda gathered her papers, her movements stiff with suppressed emotion. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," I said quietly. "But your life isn't. You're still young enough to learn from this, to rebuild with integrity. I hope someday you will." After she left, Thomas stayed behind, looking uncertain about his place in the aftermath. "I never wanted the house," he said awkwardly. "I know. That's why you deserve it." I sank into my chair, suddenly exhausted. Besides, I'm not going anywhere soon. The house is just a symbol. What matters is that someone remembers what Grace and I tried to build, a legacy of more than just money. Thomas nodded, understanding. "What will you do now?" I looked around the room, at the photographs of happier times and the empty spaces where my children should have been. "I'm going to run my company, start the foundation, and remember that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who stand by you when the rest have fallen away." As Thomas left, promising to check on me tomorrow, I felt lighter than I had in years. The promise I had made to Grace had weighed on me like a stone, binding me to people who no longer deserved my loyalty. Now I understood what she had really wanted. Not for me to keep our children physically together, but to keep the values we shared alive in them. I had failed at that. But in the ashes of that failure, I could build something new, something worthy of Grace's memory and my own self-respect. $7 million would fund a foundation to help others build their dreams the right way, through hard work and integrity. The very values my own children had rejected. As I turned out the lights and headed upstairs to sleep for the first time in 3 days, I felt Grace's presence more strongly than I had in years. Not as a ghost or a supernatural visitation, but as the memory of her wisdom living on in my decisions. "I did my best," I whispered to her memory. "Now it's time to build something new from what remains." 6 months after that fateful night, I sat on my back porch watching the sunset, a habit Grace and I had shared throughout our marriage. The evening air carried the scent of her roses, still blooming in the garden she had planted 20 years ago. Some things endure, even when everything else changes. The company was thriving under the new arrangement. Free from the threat of a forced merger, I had implemented growth strategies at a pace that made sense, expanding into 2 new states with carefully vetted partners. The independent board provided valuable oversight while respecting my experience and vision. Thomas had been promoted to Chief Operations Officer, proving himself more than capable of eventually taking the reins when I decided to step down. His integrity during the family crisis had shown me the kind of leader he could be. The foundation was up and running, already funding 3 promising young entrepreneurs from backgrounds similar to my own. Watching them build their businesses with the mentorship and capital they needed filled me with a sense of purpose I had lost in the years of trying to please my ungrateful children. I had not spoken to Amanda or Daniel since the night I revealed my new plans. Through my attorney, I knew Amanda had taken a position with a smaller construction firm, several steps down from the CEO role she had coveted. Daniel and Jessica had divorced after their financial situation became untenable. He had moved to another state, presumably to escape gambling debts he couldn't pay. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. I wasn't expecting visitors, and few people dropped by unannounced these days. When I opened the door, I was shocked to find Amanda standing on my porch, looking thinner and less polished than the last time I had seen her. "Dad," she said simply, "may I come in?" I hesitated only briefly before stepping aside. Whatever she wanted, I could at least hear her out. The anger that had sustained me in the early days, after their betrayal, had gradually mellowed into a sad acceptance of what could not be changed. She entered tentatively, glancing around as if seeing the house for the first time. "Nothing's changed," she commented. "Some things don't need to," I replied, leading her to the living room. "Coffee?" She nodded, and I busied myself in the kitchen, using the familiar routine to gather my thoughts. When I returned with 2 cups, she was looking at the family photos I still kept, displayed despite everything. "I was surprised to get your call," she said when I handed her the coffee. "I wasn't sure you'd ever want to see me again." "I almost didn't," I admitted. "But I'm curious why you wanted to meet." Amanda set down her cup untouched. "I've been doing a lot of thinking these past months. About what happened. About the choices I made. And I was wrong." The words seemed to cost her considerable effort. "What I did, what we planned to do to you. It was unforgivable." I said nothing, waiting for her to continue. "After everything fell apart, I had to start over. New job, much lower position, no family support. It was humbling." She looked directly at me for the first time. "For the first time in my life, I had to truly earn everything on my own merit." "That was the lesson I always tried to teach you," I said quietly. "The one your mother believed in most strongly." Amanda nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "I know that now. I've been reading Mom's old journals that I took after she died. Her words, they hit differently now that I'm older. Now that I understand what it means to lose everything that matters." This surprised me. I hadn't known Grace kept journals, or that Amanda had them. "What did they say?" "So much about her hopes for us, her pride in the values you both shared, her concern that Daniel and I might never understand what real success means." Amanda wiped her eyes. "She saw it coming, Dad. She knew we were at risk of becoming exactly what we did become." The thought that Grace had worried about this even then was both painful and vindicating. She had seen the potential flaws in our children that I had been blind to in my love for them. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because I owe you the truth. And an apology, for whatever it's worth." Amanda straightened her shoulders. "I'm not asking for forgiveness or for you to change your decisions. I don't deserve either. I just needed you to know that I understand now what you and Mom tried to teach us all along." For the first time since that birthday dinner, I felt a flicker of something other than disappointment when looking at my daughter. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. "And Daniel? Have you spoken to him?" Amanda shook her head. "He won't talk to me. Blames me for everything falling apart. Last I heard, he was working as a sales clerk in Arizona, living in a studio apartment." The news should have given me some satisfaction, knowing Daniel was finally living within his actual means, but I felt only sadness for the waste of potential. "And you? Will you be all right?" "I'm getting there," she said with a small smile. "The new job is actually teaching me a lot, and I'm seeing someone who values honesty and hard work. He reminds me a little of Thomas, actually." We talked for another hour, careful conversation that skirted the most painful topics while acknowledging the new reality between us. As she prepared to leave, Amanda paused at the door. "The foundation. It's a good thing you're doing. Mom would have loved it." "Thank you," I said, surprised by how much her approval meant. "It helps me feel like something positive came from all this. Maybe someday, if you wanted, I could volunteer some time. Help with construction assessments for the new entrepreneurs or something." The offer was tentative, clearly prepared for rejection. "Maybe," I allowed, not ready to commit but not dismissing the idea either, one step at a time. After she left, I returned to the porch and the sunset. The encounter had left me unsettled but not unhappy. People can change, I reminded myself. I had changed too, growing stronger by standing up for myself instead of sacrificing my self-respect on the altar of a promise that had become toxic. The Larry Winters who had allowed his children to take advantage of his love and generosity was gone, replaced by a man who understood that true love sometimes requires hard boundaries. That man would never again confuse self-sacrifice with love or mistake exploitation for family loyalty. The $7 million decision that had seemed so drastic 6 months ago now felt like the most honest choice I had made in years. Money that might have funded entitlement and greed was instead supporting hard work and genuine ambition. Grace would indeed have approved. As the final light faded from the sky, I thought about the long road that had brought me here. From a poor boy with calloused hands to a successful businessman. From a hopeful young father to a betrayed old man. And now, finally, to someone who had found peace in honesty and boundaries. The family I had promised Grace I would keep together no longer existed in its original form. But perhaps, if Amanda's visit was any indication, something new might eventually grow in its place. Something based on truth rather than obligation. On earned respect rather than entitlement. I didn't know if Daniel would ever find his way back, or if Amanda's apparent change of heart would last. But for the first time in years, I felt free of the crushing weight of trying to force family bonds that had disintegrated from within. $7 million had been the price of that freedom. Money well spent in the final accounting. What would you do if someone you loved betrayed your trust? Would you find the strength to stand your ground, or would you give in to keep the peace? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and share with someone who might need to hear that sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the greatest peace. Thank you for listening, and remember, in this world, you get exactly what you earn, nothing more and nothing less.